Open mine eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me.
I'm a product of radical hospitality. I lived in Wellspring back in 1999 with my family, my sister and my mom. And in 2021, I authored a book, which I had Nancy endorse for me. Obviously, she and Rosemary and Wellspring Home had a big part in me becoming an author. So did Mrs. Daly and Gloucester High and all the people who just encouraged me to be better than what I thought I could be. So, here it goes. Chapter 1, change your life. If you could change your life right now, how would you change it? The question wasn't meant to be that challenging. It was an icebreaker to start off a study group discussion at our church, the Catholic parish of St. Anne's in Peabody, Massachusetts, back in 1979. Our group went around the circle. I would stop doing what I'm doing. I don't want to work for a big organization. I want to downsize my life. I want to work for a company that cares for its employees and makes a good product. I want to live in a community and share our home with other people who need a home. My husband and I have been welcoming young women in crisis to stay in our home, but I need support. We can't do it alone. That comment was from Mary Jane Veronese, if I'm pronouncing that right, who had for years volunteered with Birthright, the nonprofit that supports pregnant women. People were nodding. This wasn't just an icebreaker. We all felt it. This was big. Most of us were in our 40s and 50s. We had already lived out decades, making decisions that we believed aligned with our values of justice and compassion. We were well along the path where those decisions had taken us. But that evening, we were ready to consider major changes in our lives. For 10 years, we had already experienced radical changes in the church, of which we were all members. Mary Jane had worked at General Electric before becoming a full-time mother and now coordinated the middle school religious education program at St. Anne's. Her husband, Paul, had served in the Navy and on submarines and used the GI Bill to get a college degree. He had taught high school English and worked his way up to the Peabody Public Schools to principal and assistant superintendent. They still lived in the house where they'd raised their daughter. It was bigger than they needed. Mary Jane could have done without the pool. But Paul and Mary Jane both loved having the church youth group come over for parties and use it. Nancy Sawyer, Mary Grace McCullough were nuns who St. Anne's had hired in 1969 to create a religious education program for all ages, unusual of Catholic churches at this time. They were hosting the meeting of 10 people that night in a cozy living room of the little Cape-style 4-room house the parish had bought for them to live in. It was their first home as adults outside of convent. They were thrilled to be able to host dinners for friends and family or for meetings like this one. That night was the beginning of Wellspring House. We were all about to change our lives, radically. The 4 of us. Mary Jane, Paul, Nancy, and Mary Grace were among the founding group who within 2 years would open a house that would welcome people in crisis who had no home. It would be our home too, not just a homeless shelter. What we were feeling that night was similar to what we hear from people of all ages still today. We were compassionate people, often burnt out, working too long hours within the nonprofit or social service structure, or working at jobs whose values we didn't agree with, and doing the real work we wanted to do in our church or civic lives, feeling isolated or alone in our homes, trying to earn enough to keep up with the cost of living, without ever feeling we were making a difference in the world. We still hear people today asking, just as we were that night, what do I want to do with my life? We hear young people questioning the expectations of them, going to college, getting a degree, taking on debt, getting a job, and moving up in the ladder in the hopes of paying it off and someday having a home of their own. They're asking, is this really what I want to do? Many are deciding they do not. We also hear the question among older people, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? That was a question in our group. Many in our group were also personally at a crossroads or in crisis. A man who taught our 6th graders was disturbed that General Electric had started manufacturing nuclear bombs. Yet, he needed his job there to support his large family. Another 6th grade teacher was counting on people in the parish to help her cope with a terrible marriage and to protect her children. Another was caring for a severely handicapped husband and an adopted son with serious learning challenges, while supporting her daughter's dream of going to college the next year. Despite all that we were struggling with, together and privately, that night we got people asking themselves, if I could, what would I do? What was clear to us that night, clear to us all that night, was that we needed to keep talking about our answers to the question and pay attention to what they had in common. We all wanted to practice hospitality. That word was key to the work we wanted to do. Hospitality meant opening our doors to people and also to ideas. We knew what it meant. We knew what it meant risk too. We knew it meant risk too, sorry. When you open your doors, you can't be sure who or what will come in. You sacrifice a degree of control, but you also gain new friends and breathe in a new spirit. We had an idea then how far the next decades would outstrip those first imaginings. We could not envisage. Let's just go with envisage. That Wellspring House would welcome a center of innovation and shared enterprise on the vanguard of changing attitudes about homelessness, poverty, single mothers, feminism, and affordable housing. It would be a place of learning and discovery where people of all ages and desires could build their dreams. It would be a community that grew from decisions made together to create a place and an atmosphere that attracted people from all over the North Shore of Massachusetts and beyond. They would come not just seeking help, but also bringing their own ideas and solutions on how to respond to injustice. We also could not imagine how hard it would be to ensure that spirit of community would continue when the founders eventually needed to step down and hand over the reins to the new leaders. Thank you.
Glimpses of truth.